This afternoon, we definitely will zoom in into the Office of the Finance Ministry, or the Finance Minister to be precise, Ken Ofori-Atta, who has already outlined the measures that he's going to be taking as far as the debt sustainability program is concerned. Today, he's launched the domestic debt programming, that is the exchange program. Let's see how the details will go, but also updates on this indicates that in Parliament, the minority in Parliament has indicated that it is actually not going to support the program that government has proposed or rolled out or has launched, because it really just comes to intensify the economic problem of the citizenry, and so it would not back the program that the finance minister has launched. Remember that the success of the IMF is actually based on this particular program. Let's see how government can be able to rake in some revenue or retain cash to check our debt levels and make it sustainable. Let's see how that will go. We're having the discussion this afternoon with Daniel Osabute, who is a senior economist and lecturer at the Accra Technical University. Also, we'll have Dr. Patrick Esumi, who is senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School, also join us in the discussion. But we'll take a breather. Let's go and come. When we come back, I will just go through maybe a few details of that, and then the guests will also join in the discussion. I am Annie Efwampofu. We'll be back shortly. All right, you're welcome back to Good Afternoon Ghana. I almost said Good Morning Ghana. Welcome back to Good Afternoon Ghana. And let me just use the opportunity to welcome Daniel Osabute, who is a senior lecturer at the Accra Technical University, economist for that matter. And Dr. Patrick Esumi will also join us. He's also senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School. He will join us via Zoom. Doc, you're welcome. Thank you for your time. Good afternoon to you. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Our production team will take us through to Parliament to get the details of what the minority is also saying, as it has already indicated that it will not support government program. I'm just trying to get maybe the details of what it actually said. So it says that the minority in Parliament says it will not accept government's proposed debt restructuring program as announced. According to the caucus, the policy is unacceptable and cannot be allowed to proceed. The minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, said that this at the press conference on Monday, December 5, 2022. And he said this side, or his side, will use every legitimate means to oppose the move. Remember that the finance minister yesterday rolled out how the domestic debt structuring program will go, and today it was launched at the information ministry. We will also bring you maybe an excerpt of the video of that one as well. So those of you holding investments, you may want to pay attention to see how that will affect you. And most importantly, you take note that it is supposed to be a voluntary action. So you agree or disagree. However, the ministry is pleading with every person holding investment to, side and burden share. So we'll talk about that into details. But Mr. Sabate, before I come to you, let's take some excerpts of Ken Ofori-Atta's briefing today that has to do with the launch of the domestic debt exchange program.
We are gathered here today to invite holders of domestic debt to voluntarily exchange approximately 137 billion Ghana cedis of the domestic notes and bonds of the Republic, including Estela and Dache bonds, for a package of new bonds to be issued by the Republic. The debt sustainability analysis demonstrated unequivocally that Ghana's public debt is unsustainable and that the government may not be able to fully service its debt down the road if no action is taken now. Indeed, debt servicing is now absorbing more than half of total government revenues and almost 70% of tax revenues, while our total public debt stock, including that of state-owned enterprises and all, exceeds 100% of our GDP. This is why we are today announcing the debt exchange, which will help in restoring our capacity to service debt. This is the path towards resetting the economy to a more stable one capable of addressing the development challenges of the country. The reasons are quite clear. COVID-19 pandemic, rising global food prices, rising crude oil and energy prices, and the Russia-Ukraine war adversely affected Ghana's macroeconomy with spillovers to the financial sector. Ghana's domestic debt exchange program. The objective of this program is to alleviate the debt burden in a most transparent, efficient, and expedited manner. In this context, by means of an exchange offer. Ghana is not the first nation to undertake such domestic debt operation. To illustrate the point, let me cite examples of just two countries among many others in the last decade. Jamaica resorted to such operations in the past, notably in 2010 and 2013. In both cases, it shows the sense of responsibility of the American people and proceeded through a voluntary approach. The approach was highly successful, as more than 99% of holders of domestic bonds participated in the exchange. On the contrary, in the case of Greece, the authorities chose to undertake a coercive approach whereby a law was passed to force people into participating. We intend to avoid as much as possible the Greek approach as we strive to reach a consensual solution with our bondholders, which really is the Ghanaian way. In any case, the good news is that the domestic debt exchange has yielded positive results both in Greece and Jamaica and many others, and will certainly put our economy on a much stronger footing. Greece, as you know, has now recovered full market access. We certainly anticipate a similar success story in Ghana. I want to assure you about the government's commitment to do what is necessary to ensure.
Welcome back. That was the finance minister earlier this morning at the information ministry when he launched the domestic debt exchange program for Ghana. And if you heard, he actually said that it had yielded results in countries like Jamaica. So one will ask, what was the state or the conditions of Jamaica when this domestic debt exchange program was proposed, that it yielded results? Are the conditions the same? We may want to do the analysis as we speak on. Doc, you're welcome once again.
Thank you very much, Anne.
Right. So, firstly, before we get into the whole, program lined up within the debt restructuring, how did we get here?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And how did we get there? This is a multi-million-dollar question for which every Ghanaian will be interested in having an answer to this question. You would have realized that 2 years ago, when the economy started having this signs, we started seeing the signs of financial challenges. We had economists and other finance experts encouraging government to run to the IMF. 2015, we had a similar program with the IMF without this debt restructuring coming in, where people may be approached to voluntarily forgo their interest over a period. And we have pensioners who are even bound to suffer and all that. So I believe that we are where we are today because when we're expecting government to have come out clear to let us know the true state of the economy, we never had that. Today, I'm happy that we are being told that indeed we are going through economic crisis, for which government is appealing to investors to understand the policy that they are about to roll out, to voluntarily give in to this. So we didn't act early. That is why we are here, because I believe that if we had acted early, we would have saved the situation instead of we getting to this point of having to cause investors to go through this ordeal. So, Anne, we should have acted very fast. We didn't. Rather, we're trying to play some politics with it. I believe when the minority group in parliament started warning government that, hey, government, some of the figures that you are churning out are figures that can easily be challenged. Why wouldn't you rather let Ghanaians know the true state? And today we are being told that indeed we have lots of challenges. It didn't just come out of the blue. It was a gradual process that has deteriorated. And that is the price that we are all paying today as Ghanaians.
I'm trying to just grasp details of the IMF program under the Mahama administration.
Yeah.
Because I in the discussion with other government officials, there's the attempt to do a comparison.
Yeah.
So, I mean, regardless the different conditions, we still went to IMF.
Yes.
But at this point in time, it looks like it's necessary we get into the details of what led each of or either of the government to take us to the IMF.
Yeah.
What can we say about the previous administration that still went to the IMF because it needed, it termed something technical assistance,
Yeah.
which I'm sure financial support came in.
Yeah.
So what really took the previous administration to IMF?
What made the previous administration to go to IMF was the energy crisis that government experienced. The energy crisis affected businesses where industry players have to barely rely on plants to power their machines. They spend so much in fueling these generators and plants to the extent that cost of production became so high. So what really made the NDC government then to go to the IMF was the fact that most businesses were collapsing. They were relying so much on fuel to, produce. Fortunately for us, we are not having this energy crisis today with us. Today, we have gone to IMF because our debt has become unsustainable in the first place. The amount that we use in paying interest on debt, as the finance minister rightly mentioned, about 70% of our tax revenue is going into payment of interest, not just servicing, but you are paying interest, okay? Now, if you are using close to 50% of your total revenue in paying interest, it tells you that it is very expensive to manage this debt, for which you have to cry for assistance. And that is why we have gone to the IMF, because our debt is becoming unsustainable. And people have even asked questions whether within this period of 3, 4, 5 years, we'll be able to bring the economy back on track.
So during that period, I don't think that even Ghana struggled so much to have the IMF come on board. I remember that we went for that's when we went to Senche.
Yes.
For the economic review policy or homegrown policy we wanted to put together.
Exactly so.
And we presented and it was accepted.
Yes.
So on May 11, 2016, it says that this is from the IMF website. It says a team of International Monetary Fund, that's IMF led by Joel, visited Accra from April 27, May 11, 2016 to conduct a discussion on the third review of Ghana's financial and economic program supported by the IMF Extended Credit Facility. So this is where I wanted to capture that the facility was extended.
Extended, yes.
So at that point, you can say that they came on board, they realized that we were maybe a bit disciplined and were willing to even extend by 1 year or
Exactly.
1 more year, even with a new administration.
Yes, looking
right?
at the two scenarios, you could see clearly that in 2015, 2016, the condition that led us to the IMF, the conditions, they are not as we have. I mean, this time things have deteriorated. I mean, just to say it in plain language, things have deteriorated because if you look at the debt to GDP then, as against the 80 plus that we are experiencing today. And of course, this time we are having to go through stiffer conditions and we have to go through austerity measures because the debt is so huge that if you don't introduce some of these conditions, it will be very difficult for you to bring the economy back on track. Now, we are talking about freezing employment to the public sector. There's a freeze. But when you look at 2015, 2016, even though there was even though they put there was a freeze on employment to the public sector, they made provision for replacement. Those retiring, okay, you had the opportunity to be replaced. I don't know about this. I mean, this particular freeze, whether irrespective of the number of people who retire within a year, still there will not be that opportunity for replacement.
Okay, so I think in that period,
Yes.
the freeze on employment, there were some exceptions to
There were some
essential
exceptions,
services,
exactly
health
so.
sector, and I think some other, I think security.
Yes,
or
security,
something.
health, and then virtually it boiled down to the number of people retiring, okay? Whether the health services, the security, once
will
you
be
have people, they will
replaced.
have to be replaced.
Right.
We have not been given detail as to whether it would take the same format. Are people who will be retiring going to be replaced within the period?
No, I
that
think
we-
this current one, this freeze doesn't have that facility.
So this one is tougher than what we had
Right.
in 2015, 2016.
Okay. It's interesting because, and I decided to go there because it looks like there's been an attempt to do the comparison because the previous administration, I spoke with the Deputy Minister of Finance earlier on today on Good Morning Ghana, and she indicated that, the previous administration was supported to go into the IMF, and so they expect the same support for this particular government. Let's welcome Dr. Patrick Esuming, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, and he has joined us via Zoom. Doc, thank you for your time. You're welcome. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to viewers.
Great. So we were attempting to look at the conditions that took us to the IMF in the previous administration and what we're faced with today. All that the finance minister is obviously trying to do is get us to a sustainable level so that we will have a green light from the IMF. Do the conditions, which applied in a previous administration apply today? And can we look at it with the same eye and hope that, well, when we are able to bring our debt to the sustainable level, we will be okay as a country, as it happened in the previous administration?
So I think our current conditions are much worse than the last time we went to the IMF. No two ways about it. I think the size of our debt compared to then is completely different. I think, but structurally, what has taken us to the IMF is similar. The fact that we have problems with our public finances, the structure of our budget, and that we don't generate enough revenue. And then also, the economy is so susceptible to external shocks. So small thing that happen in the global economy has severe impact. I think we cannot really put, much of the reason for the last one on too much on the energy crisis. I think the energy crisis was the situation, but you have to understand that at that time too, especially late 2014, we are seeing some oil price shocks, and then we had seen that at that time we also struggling, even though the debt and the interest payment was not as much as it is today. At that time, the public payroll has become a big burden, absorbing about 70% of our revenue. If you recall, this was from a build-up after the introduction of the single spine salary. So even though we are in a much worse situation than the last time we went to the IMF, I think, structurally, in terms of the problems of the economy, they haven't really changed. The extent and the severity of the problem is much deeper now. And that means that this one will take us much longer. So we are going for an extended credit facility, but, typically it's 4 years that can be extended to 5. But, the depth of our problems this time will take us much longer. So we cannot expect that the recovery we made to our public finances then, we made the same kind of recovery. I think we also have to understand that we really didn't complete the last program properly when we exited, because when the final review was done, there were some outstanding items that, we were expected to continue and achieve. It looked like then we were in a hurry to exit the program for whatever reason. So I think also clearly that time, the debt sustainability analysis didn't really indicate that we needed a debt restructuring before we could enter the program. This time we do. That is why we are seeing the announcement that we've seen yesterday and today. So this is going to be more painful. It's going to take a much longer time before we get anywhere near to where we were before the crisis.
What were some of these programs that were still hanging at the point of exiting that we probably could have concluded it properly?
So I think the last exit meeting, you see, there was a lot of discussion about additional revenue envelopes that the government needed to expand. So I'm not sure that our budget service ratio had come to the level that was required. And the budget service ratio is the fraction of your revenues that you use to service your loans. And then some of the indicators hadn't really been met. At the same time, in terms of additional revenue lines that had been agreed, in particular, the property tax that we've been hearing about now, it was something that was part of what we discussed under the last IMF program, as part of the conditions that we needed to ensure that we continue on the consolidation, which we didn't do. Exemptions was also discussed. So I think we were in a hurry to finish the last program, that we didn't really lay the fundamental structures to ensure that our public finances came on a much more sustainable path. And those have obviously come to bite us. And you see that this year we have rushed to pass the exemptions bill. And then we've also seen that finally there's been some activity on the property taxes.
So we can conclude by saying that, in effect, we were rushing into indiscipline.
Mm-hmm.
I think I won't say we were rushing into indiscipline, but you got a sense that you don't forget that going to the previous IMF had been characterized as a result of incompetence, and therefore, politically, it was seen that an attempt to extend the program probably had some political consequences. And don't forget that we celebrated, at least when the I think
when the program
2020
ended
or 2019, it was being touted as an achievement that we promised to take you out of the IMF and we've taken you out. So I won't say we look like the IMF program was putting some restraint on us, and we were in a hurry to finish it. Maybe some of it, because of what had been said in the lead up to the election. So all of that contributed to the decision to exit the program so quickly. But at the same time, I think the fundamental problems of the economy were really not resolved, and I think the results is there for all of us to see.
So I was just trying to see if I can juxtapose our total revenues that we accrued over the period or over the years to government programs that we have seen, at least the popular programs that we have been touting as far as government policies, new policies are concerned.
Yeah.
So from 2016, the total revenue, we're able to garner about over 22 billion, 27 billion in 2016, 33 in 2017. In 2018 was over 39. 2019 is over 45. 2020 over 47 billion. That's 47 billion 451. And then 2021 57 and 60. We
Yeah.
haven't ended 2022, but
Yeah.
I know we're
65.
We're around 65.
Yeah.
We're projected about 97.
Yeah, 95.
95
No, 98.
Okay, 98
Yeah, 98.
billion. So how is it that, okay, so over the period you see that there's some increments
Yeah.
in total revenue generation.
Yeah.
So why do we still lack? Because if you check our books, we still have statutory funds in arrears, which we should not at least. And sometimes when you ask, they will tell you statutory funds have always been arrears, but must still always be in arrears. Because if you check our total revenue, we are on the increase. Yeah. So is it the fault of government policies that is eating us up? Or what else? They've said COVID-19, they've said Russia-Ukraine war. Where really is the problem?
Yeah, you see.
Because with COVID-19, we had some amount of money coming in.
19 billion. Close to 19 billion.
Yes, close to 19 billion, right?
Yeah, yes.
So where is the loophole?
Yeah, and on the revenue side, it is clear that consistently we've been improving on it,
Right.
year in, year out.
Right.
The challenge that we have is a high deficit on our budget. If you look at 2022 budget, the deficit was about 35 billion, okay? As we speak, 2023, when government have decided to reduce expenditure, I mean, looking at some of the measures that they have rolled out, now we are projecting our deficit to be about 61 billion. Okay, so we always tout ourselves that, look, we'll be able to reduce our expenditure. We are doing A, B, C, D. But in reality, it is not reflecting. I've asked myself, why should we overburden ourselves with this huge deficit when government have rolled out policies to cut down on expenditure to the extent that now V8, V6, and all, I mean, their appointees, discretionary expenditure will go down by 30%, fuel going down by 50%, and then we end up projecting 61 billion deficit. So the discipline aspect of our expenditure is what has led us to this particular condition, because we overspend. We are not cutting our coat according to our cloth, because at the end of the day, we rely on support. We go to the international bond market, we raise bond, we have enough money to augment our revenue that we are able to generate. So we end up accumulating huge debt. And that's the problem that we have. Okay, now if we decide to be a bit disciplined in the way we spend, of course we have statutory payment, you are talking about compensation, which we cannot deny workers of, is there. And then you are also looking at interest payment. So these are the two major statutory payments, which you cannot run away from. What about the other expenditure that we spend so much on, or items that we spend so much on? So the problem has to do with the overspending. Now, there are certain areas when you put in money, you'll be able to rake in the benefit within a short period. Others will take time. Okay, so we need to be very careful where we put our money. I always say that borrowing is not bad, but it depends on where you are putting the money.
Let me go to Doc. Doc, so did you agree with what he's saying? Borrowing is on. I was actually reflecting on the previous administration was borrowing, definitely. Where did they put the money? Now, today, I'm looking at, what's it called? Terminal 3.
Yeah.
Which obviously is raking in
Loss of revenue.
a lot. So it was a good investment, maybe.
Excellent investment.
A good investment that obviously can pay for itself and then take care of other
Yes.
projects. But today, the government is also into other policies like factories. Doc, I mean, if you can respond to that. And it has reported, we are yet to check, but it's reported that we have about, from 1D, 1F government priority project, we have over 160 factories that have been revived, put up. I mean, whichever we want to capture it, but we have to do the checks. These are areas that we expect that they can also rake in some revenue within a stipulated period of time. Doc, not so.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, with your broader question, yes, the revenue has grown, but the expenditure has grown faster. And I think that's a big part of the problem. Even the 2023 budget is a little bit more disappointing because we are expecting to grow revenue from just under 100 billion to 143.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are growing the expenditure way more. So I think that's really a lot more problematic. So our inability to rein in the expenditure is a problem. But it doesn't mean that the revenue itself is performing well. In spite of the fact that the revenue has more than doubled over the last 3 or so years, you have to understand that we are still doing way below what our peers are doing. In terms of our tax effort, the fraction of our GDP that we collect as tax is just too low. So on one hand, yes, the expenditure is growing, the revenue has increased, but not where it should have been. In terms of where the project where have you spent the money? I think the government flagship programs, at least the number that we see, doesn't appear to be the most expensive things that we spend the money on. If you look at the annual expenditures we make on the bigger ones, free SHS and 1D, 1F, and the planting for food and jobs, you can't say that those are really the bigger lines that break our back. I think in the last few years, the biggest problem has been the interest payment, which itself is because of the rate of accumulation of the debt. So the question will come again: what have you used those extra debt for? Now, for this year, a big part of the jump might be explained by the cedi depreciation, because when the cedi depreciates, then the external component of the debt, when you convert it to cedi, is a way bigger amount. And especially, I mean, since the start of the year, we all know what has happened to the currency. But I think there's also a lot of inefficiencies in how public money is spent. And you only need to look at what happens from the Auditor General side to know that we are not spending as efficiently as we should be. But in the 2023 budget in particular, I think we really missed a chance to signal that we are going to do substantial cuts. And I think that's the part that is also disappointing. That, given what, based on the announcement that we've heard today, given what ordinary Ghanaians are going to be made to face in terms of, delay payment of their holdings of public debt, of government bonds, and so on and so forth. And then you juxtapose that with the cuts that we saw in the government expenditures. I think that was quite disappointing.
So let's get into the debt exchange program that government is looking at, rolling out. The domestic one has been launched today, and even though we are talking about expenditure, government is still looking to borrowing more, because there's this, borrowing on the table for COVID-19 recovery program. And then I think there's another 80 million borrowing for what's called Cathedral. And you're wondering, why is government just not, why? Because these are not emergency programs. In fact, if you talk about COVID-19 recovery, why do we have to borrow for COVID-19 recovery program?
Anne, it's surprising because A government that has indicated in the 2023 budget that they will put on hold non-critical projects. So where do we put the cathedral? Is it so critical?
Well, the president has indicated that it's that critical.
I don't see it so. I don't think it is so critical. What Ghanaians need now is to reduce their costs in terms of, living expenses. Okay? We are in a country where we have 40.4% inflation, price of goods and services going up every day. So this shouldn't be a priority. I don't think so. That is why we need to put a stop to some of these non-critical projects. We don't need it now.
All right. So the breakdown for the domestic debt program that government has rolled out says under the program, domestic bondholders will be asked to exchange their instruments for new ones. And that's just technical language. Really, that's all. Existing domestic bonds as for the 1st of December 2022 will be exchanged for a set of 4 new bonds maturing 2017, 2019, and 2032. Okay, we have 2027, 2029, 2032, okay, and 2037.
Yeah.
Now, the annual coupon on all of these bonds will be set at 0% in 2023. And then 5% 2024 and 10% from 2025 until maturity. Coupon payments will be semi-annual. Now, the ones that were exempted, treasury bills are completely exempted, and all holders will be paid the full value of their investment on maturity. And then there will be no haircut on principal or bonds. I don't see where this one comes in. I mean, economically, who is expecting a haircut on principal anyway?
No, you see, Anne.
Or some haircut sometimes affects principal. I don't know. I mean, I need education.
We are just playing around jargons, what is haircut? You are talking about an original agreement or arrangement that you had with an investor. Now there is going to be a change in that particular agreement. Haircut simply means you have the investor losing so much. So realize investor losses. That is it. Now let's look at it this way. Inflation is 40.4, okay? If you are claiming that there wouldn't be any haircut on principal, in terms of the purchasing power of this same investment, after a year, if you leave your investment with government and then you are not earning any interest, what it means is that what that 1,000 cedis can buy today, at the end of the year, come 2023, the same 1,000 cedis cannot buy the same items at the end of 2023 if we don't check the way inflation is going up. Mm-hmm. Okay? So in terms of the purchasing power of what you have invested, it is reducing. So you may not come out and say that there is haircut on principal, but in effect, my investment has lost some value. And that is different from the original agreement that you had with me, the investor. Okay? Now, haircut can affect 1 of 3 or 2 of 3 or 3 of 3. We are talking about the interest, which you've been told that definitely investors have to forgo their interest in 2023. So it has affected it. Now you are talking about the principal, which you are being told is not going to affect, haircut didn't affect it. But I've explained that in terms of the purchasing power of your principal, it's going to reduce. It has been affected. Okay? I mean, let's look at this scenario.
Well, that's for the economists to make that analysis to the bondholder or the investor.
So you have 2,000 today. 2,000 cedis can buy a mobile phone. Because of inflation, by 2023, the same 2,000 cannot buy a mobile phone. Meanwhile, interest payment is supposed to compensate you, the investor, for the lost value. So if you are withholding that interest, that is to compensate me, and you tell me that my principal wouldn't be affected, it is wrong. Definitely, the strength of your principal will reduce. And it's a form of what? Haircut. Okay? And then with this debt exchange, I mean, directly you are saying that I'm extending the maturity period of the debt. That is it. So if my investment is supposed to mature by December 2023, there is a new policy. You cannot get it by December 23. So what happens? I'm denying my principal. Okay, so in effect, you could see that this haircut or the what do you call it? The realized investor losses is affecting almost all these three segments when it comes to investment.
So, Doc,
And that is a reality.
let me have Doc come. Doc, are you there? Hello, Doc.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so we're looking at the three positives that government posed to be, at least a good part of the domestic debt exchange program, about the no haircut on the principal. And he has explained how your value of the principal itself has gone down. So government cannot, use a language that your principals will not be touched.
Yeah, I think that part was a little confusing to hear. I think, yes, the nominal value of whatever you are owed is not going to be reduced. But I mean, if I had 10,000 cedis due me today, and you are going to pay that in 3 years, I mean, 10,000 today and 10,000 in 3 years, they are not the same. So even though in nominal terms you are still receiving the 10,000, I think it's clear that you'd have lost some value of your investment. Once you announce a restructuring of this kind, it simply means that the investor, the holder of your debt, is not going to receive exactly what they were expecting at the time they were expecting. Whichever way you look at it, it means that they've made a loss of value, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So yes, I think saying that there's no haircut on principal doesn't make it any less painful. I think so clearly, however you look at it, there's going to be a loss. The question is, how are we apportioning the burden as the finance minister has been saying that we should burden share. So we are told that individual investors will not lose, but you have to understand that a lot of people hold their investment through collective investment schemes and others through other finance houses and investment funds. So people are going to lose through there. There's no two ways about it. I think we should just all embrace, and hopefully the government will stick to the whatever terms it has agreed, and not
but by the explanation you have given, government is pleading with the investor to debt share, but government is not being honest with the investor by the language it is using. Because if you go straightly by the economic conditions and the financial definitions of money values, government is not being straightforward and honest with the people. And so how do you expect me to come on board when you're still being dishonest?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think my own understanding is that once you defer somebody's payment, I mean, forget about the losses on the interest payment, the expected interest. But once you defer the payment, and they means that whenever you pay, they are not getting the same value. So it is a loss. The challenge is, I think the challenge that the government is going to have at the moment is that, and I was glad that some journalists posed this question during the press conference, that it doesn't appear that people in government, people who make the decisions, have taken as much of the pinch as they are asking ordinary Ghanaians who put their funds into government debt to hold. And I think that's one challenge they will face. But look, I mean, we are in difficult times, and some sacrifices has been made. I just wish that the government had made a lot more sacrifices. It would have been easier for them to ask ordinary Ghanaians to also make more sacrifices.
Right, you're still watching Good Afternoon Ghana. This one says that, Annie, good afternoon. The lies of this government will soon be exposed, especially the 1D1F and Annie. They have spent our monies recklessly, and now they are panicking, looting for $3 million for IMF on Ghana from Alhaji Haruna. So let's take a breather. When we come back, we'll come and wrap up on some of the issues that we have talked about. We'll just wrap up within a few minutes. We'll be back shortly. Right, welcome back to Good Afternoon Ghana. We're still dealing with the issue of the bondholders or the debt exchange program that's been put out by the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Let's wrap up. The minority has indicated, let me go to Doctor. I'll come to you as the last person. Doc, so the minority has indicated that it's actually not going to support the government in this call for the program that it is rolling out. Even though government has indicated that this is voluntary, people may want to come on board, but pleading with people to still come on board anyway. What's the risk that we stand to, go through should we fail in also getting some revenue generation from this action?
Well, I think, it's important that the government gets all stakeholders on board with this. And I'm not sure the level of consultation that had gone on, especially with not just with the debt holders, but also with the minority. Because at this point in time, we really need a united front. We don't really want people pulling in different directions. So I do hope that once the minority comes out like that, you get the sense that maybe they were not sufficiently consulted. So I do hope that there's that consultation happening in the background to make sure that this is seamless. We really, we've boxed ourselves in the corner where we really need the IMF funding. Fortunately, unfortunately. And then, because our debt is currently not sustainable, we really need to do this restructuring. I guess the one for the external debt holders might even be more contentious. So really, you expect that the domestic one will go more smoothly. So I hope that beyond the background, that discussion with all parties. Clearly, the government is saying that there's been consultation with the bondholders, but it's not just with the debtors, the people who hold the debt. It really has to be all stakeholders. Broader group. The finance minister indicated that there have been consultation with all manner of groups. So, it doesn't appear that maybe the minority was that extensively consulted. But it's not too late. I think it's important that we get this thing ahead and moving quickly. And, because the road to recovery is going to be very long. This is a very deep crisis that we are in.
Well, I thank you, Doc. We'll leave you here. Thank you for your time. And that's Dr. Patrick Esuming there. He is a senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School. Let me come to you, Mr. Sabote, also to wrap up on that. But we also have some investors who are already losing money. I think I played some earlier on in the morning with fund managers who actually had their principals affected. What is that supposed to mean? That was before the finance minister rolled out these measures.
Yeah.
What is that in a different language?
I'm sure with the M Fund, they had it on the basis of amortization, but there was directive from SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, that looking at the rate at which the dollar is appreciating, and then we have the CD depreciating, it will be better to look at market value. So definitely, if you compare the market value of what you bought then as against the depreciation of the CD, you are going to lose part of your principal. That is it.
But I don't know if I'm thinking rightly economically. If it's M fund and dollar is appreciating, is the fund manager not benefiting?
You benefit.
So why should that affect, if you're benefiting, why should it affect the investor?
You see, that is another unfair way of treating investors. But you see, investment is all about gambling, which people don't normally know. Investment is about gambling. You need to look at the agreement that the investor had with the manager. And of course, with the M fund, it's like collective investment. You, an individual, cannot just go to the market and then have your own transaction. You need to pass it through the investment manager or whatever. So that in itself, I don't see it to be fair. One. Let me also say that.
So the individual must go through what?
You are going through the fund, like the M fund. It's just accumulation of individual monies put together to go to the financial market to buy an instrument. Okay, so if the instrument is performing well, you, the individual, benefit. If it is not performing well, you have to suffer for that.
And do investors understand?
The level of financial literacy is very low. And I think we need to come up with lots of education. And if we are not very careful with what is happening, we are likely to have panic withdrawals, okay? And it can even affect savings because people are not sure. People are not sure, especially with the Treasury bill. The question has been, what happens if government's projection is not achieved? So we are now targeting bonds. If you're unable to achieve it, will it be extended to Treasury bills? So people are still wondering. There are lots of questions that have to be answered. Define who an individual investor is. Who is an individual investor? So if we have collective investment, okay, and then interest is going to affect those who have gone into that collective investment, and you tell me that I, the individual investor, will not be affected. Once an institution bought that investment on my behalf, that institution is affected, is being affected. And by extension, I'm also being affected. So at this point, what you need to do is to come out clear and let people know what really is happening. Okay? And going forward, we need more education and that reassurance from government that these are just temporary measures to sort of bring back the economy on track. But going forward, I think that we should be able to do better.
And that's Daniel Osabote, senior economist and lecturer at the Accra Technical University. We earlier on had Dr. Patrick Esuming, who is a senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School. My name is Annie Ifuampofo. Thank you for staying through. We will still be analyzing how the situation will go, as Minority has already also stated its position on what it feels about the debt exchange program rolled out by the administration. Thanks for watching. This has been Good Afternoon, Ghana.